Hey everyone, welcome to the Massimo Show. This is Rod Santomassimo, and as I always promise, we get you incredible guests to help you move your business forward. Today we have Anthony Iannarino, speaker, author, business savant, and leader of B2B sales coach and consultancy. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Anthony, welcome to the Massimo Show.
Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled that you're one of those folks that we've been trying to track down for a while. You certainly have shown how to build a business and, yes, how to help with sales. And our audience are entrepreneurs, independent contractors, and solopreneurs. We're finding and searching and hoping for better ways to learn and grow. And so we're thrilled to have you. Anthony, before we get there, though, can you help us understand who the heck you are? So let's go way back to high school, Anthony. Where did you go to high school? Where were you raised? And what did you love to do in high school?
I like the question. What I liked to do in high school the most was find a way not to be there. I spent a very, very incredible amount of energy finding a way to get out of school as often as I could. In fact, you were not allowed to miss a certain number of days in the senior year of high school, and I missed one more than that and still managed to graduate. I was a kid raised by a single mom who was raised by a single mom. I went to Catholic schools when I was a kid, St. James the Less. So as an Italian, you recognize this, and you would recognize all the last names of all the people that I went to school with because they have as many vowels as we have and some more. And when I got to high school, I had a particular experience that started to shape my life. So I was super poor. We ate macaroni and cheese every day, or hamburger helper, or fish sticks, foods I will not eat ever again. I had them for so many meals in a row. A friend of mine got me a job washing dishes at Villa Milano's, which was a big banquet center where we would have maybe 2,000 people, at a dinner or something like that. And I was 13 years old when I took this job. I don't know that they even knew there was such a thing as labor laws. Like, you have to be 14 to work, didn't matter to them. You're only allowed to work like 20 hours a week. I worked 20 hours on Saturday. Like that was like my whole day would be at Villa Milano's. And I would put in like 40 or 50 hours a week, every single week. And they would feed me lasagna and prime rib and chocolate mousse. And Joey Milano's mom would come around and she's like, "You were so skinny. You need to eat more." And I'm like, "Miss Milano, I've had like 8 chocolate mousses today. Like, I can't eat anymore. I tried." And I fell in love with work. And the fact that they would pay me was really exciting to me. So I started skipping school. And instead of going to school, I would go directly to Villa Milano's in the morning and I would start working. And then somebody from the school would have to come and get me and pull me out. And I would argue with them like, "You don't pay me. Like, you're not paying me. They're paying me. You don't understand." And they're like, "Yeah, but you have to get an education. It'll be valuable to you later and you'll make more money." And I'm like, "No, I need money now. Like, today I need money." I just barely made it through high school. Fortunately, I'm a person who wants to be educated, but I want to do it myself. So I've always read books. Starting in 6th grade, I've never been without a book or multiple books that I'm reading at the same time. So high school wasn't great. It wasn't a great experience for me. I started a rock and roll band when I was 15. And then at 17, when I graduated from high school, I started playing music.
What years were you in high school?
I graduated in 1985. I started the rock and roll band in 1984.
So what's the name of the band?
I mean, I have to tell you the story. If you ask the name, you can either hear the story or I don't tell you the name. That's just how it works with this one.
Let's hear it.
We were practicing under a band name called Stone Groove. It was me and my brother and a drummer. So that was the name that we had. And at the rehearsal studio, there was a dude that had blonde hair, long blonde hair. He had a BC Warlock guitar, which is like all angled and looks like a spider or something. And we wanted to get him in the band, but to get him in the band, we had to let him pick the band name.
Okay.
Yeah, not okay. It was about the time like Motley Crue was really reaching the height of their popularity. And Vince Neil's first band before Motley Crue was called Rock Candy. And so he changed our name to Rock Candy.
Rock Candy.
I hated the name. I mean, it was like we were Stone Groove and we sounded like Stone Groove. And now we're Rock Candy and we don't sound like Rock Candy. Like it's just it's the wrong name. We're 17 at the time. And I got a gig at a skating rink. And a girl named Debbie had come to see me at the skating rink. And a guy named Jeff followed her to the skating rink. And he had intentions that were sort of in conflict with mine and Debbie's, to be honest with you. So we were done playing and he came to the dressing room and he started telling me all the things that he was going to do to me. And I didn't say anything. I just stood right in front of him, and I'm not conflict averse and I'm a street kid. So I stood there and just smiled at him. And then my brother hit him so hard that he collapsed onto the floor, because just the neighborhood that we grew up in, you don't push or talk or jaw at all. Like if you're going to fight, you just fight. And that's how it went. So, but he got up and he said he had a gun in his car. And so we didn't let him out of the area. So he got held down, and the guitar player took his switchblade and popped all his tires. And there was a little bit of chaos for a little while. Eventually everything settled down and everybody went home, which was great. No one was harmed. He was harmed a little bit, but not much, like not as much as he could have been. It was just mostly keeping him from hurting anybody else. So the next day we had to go out and get the check, and we all get into our roadie's El Camino. So you get an idea what this looks like. There's a bunch of guys and I'm like, let's go in and get the check. And everybody, roadies and band members alike, all said, it's your gig. You go get the check. And I'm like, we're a band. We're like brothers. Some of us are actually brothers. Like we need to go in together. And they're like, you got to go in. And so I said some unkind words to them that you might be able to imagine. And I went in and I sat down with Bob, who's like an old guy. So he's like 42 or something, and I'm 17. And Bob doesn't have a great sense of humor about any of this. And he starts to read me the riot act. Like, you had a riot. And it was like, it wasn't a riot. It was a scuffle, like I keep trying to take it down a notch. He's like, we have people's children here and their children weren't safe. And I'm like, the guy said he had a gun. We didn't know. We had to do something. So we held him down and we made sure that, and so I'm just talking. And I don't know, like 20 minutes goes by. And finally I said, Bob, I had to rent lights. We put 500 people in here at like $5 a piece. Like it's $600 and I need the money to pay for the equipment and everything else and the lights and stuff. And he picked up a check in front of my face and he said, I want you to know something. You boys are going to have a bad reputation in this town. And I said, okay. And I took the check and I walked out, sort of stunned. And I'm carrying the check in front of me. And all the guys in the El Camino are like, you got the check. I said, not only did I get the check, I said, we got a new band name. And they said, what is it? I said, we're Bad Reputation. And from that point forward, we were Bad Reputation. And you can't get a better name than that. And you can't have a better story on how you got the name. So that it worked out perfectly for me.
Let's go deeper here. You have a rock band, Bad Reputation. You didn't like going to school, but then something must have happened. Because I know you went to a Catholic university, summa cum laude graduate, and you went and got your law degree, and then you went to Harvard. So how do you go from bad reputation and not liking school to going and getting all the education behind you?
Well, I went to Los Angeles and I was fronting a hair metal band in Los Angeles. And then I had to get a job. So I got a job and I got forced into outside sales because I was selling more than the salespeople there, even though I would have never said I was selling. Like I would have never said that's what I was doing. I was just trying to help people. I was trying to help people get jobs. I was trying to help companies find the people that they needed. So I was calling people, not knowing that I was selling. I just thought, I grew up in my family's business and they said, if you don't have anything to do, call and see if you can find some people that need help. And so I was just doing that. And I would have never thought of myself as a salesperson because, of course, salespeople are smarmy, manipulative, self-oriented brat bastards or something like that. That's what I would have said at that time. I did well and I was selling and playing music and One day I had a grand mal seizure walking up to my Brentwood apartment. I was taken to UCLA and I had a giant spot on the front right lobe of my brain. They immediately told me that I had cancer and that they were going to have to give me a lobectomy, which would be cutting off one half of the entire neocortex. I protested a little bit. I was like, hang on, could it be not cancer? They said it could be, but it's not likely. I said, well, what would it be? And they said it could be what's called an arterial venous malformation. So it's a group of arteries and veins that grow into a big knot. It's congenital. And they put me through some tests the next day. And it turns out that I had a very, very large AVM. In fact, the biggest one that they'd seen. Terrible sales guys, though. They were like, let us cut your head open. It's going to be so good for us. And you're like, for you, hang on. And they're like, we're going to have a crowd of people watching. We're going to videotape it. We're going to use it to train people in the future. And I'm like, what about like my survival or something that might be important to me? Like they weren't concerned about that at all. They wanted the surgery bad. My aunt happened to work for a neurosurgeon in Columbus, Ohio. And my mom reached out to her and said, he's got an AVM. And the neurosurgeon said the very best person to remove that AVM is Dr. John True in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I flew home. I went and saw John too. And I had a 9-hour surgery where they glued the arteries and veins shut with a type of epoxy. So that was a 9-hour surgery, day one. Day two, I had an 11-hour surgery where they removed the AVM. But the AVM, the reason I had the grand mal seizure was because it pushed on my brain and it bruised the brain. So that brain would never recover. It was literally brain damage. So the damage was great enough that they had to cut off a piece of the right front lobe of the brain because their electrical impulses would never make it through the damaged part of the brain. So after that, I was 25. I hadn't gone to college. I went from high school to playing music to moving to LA. And then when I came back, I recognized after my surgery that my brain was on fire. I was like, I'm reading a book a day. I feel like I'm making new neural connections. And my neurosurgeon at the time, or my neurologist rather, said, we have no evidence that any of that's true. You're just freaking out because we cut a piece of your brain off. And it turns out he was wrong. We now know that there's a lot of plasticity in the brain. A trauma like that can create the fact that it starts to make new neural connections, trying to find its way to doing its job. I did realize I'd lost a piece of brain and I thought I should do something with whatever part of it I have left. So I went to college and I did that. I did a 4-year degree in 3 years, working full time. And then I had an advisor who said, you're really good at this. You should take the LSAT. And I said, I'll do that. I need to know what it is first. Right. And he said, it's the law school entrance exam. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, I think you'd be great at it. So I took the LSAT. I scored in the top like 15% of test takers ever. They take that score and they multiply it by your grade point average, which mine was 3.97 in college. Now my grade point in school would have been like 0.97. Right. And now I'm 3.97 because I read everything. I did everything that was required of me because I was interested in learning. I got the Dean's Academic Scholarship to law school. And that's a great way to find out that you never want to be a lawyer and you don't really want to spend a lot of time with them. And you definitely don't want to be around political types. So that convinced me business is a better place for me. And I was fortunate enough to go back into the family business, and they sent me to Harvard Business School for their OPM program.
What is the family business?
Temporary staffing.
And when you say family business, were you raised by a single mom? So it's something that your mother did?
My mom and her business partner, yeah.
So therefore, you went into the family business, which seemed to be consistent with you. You said you went to California, but you really weren't the connector. And then you went and found out how to connect with people. And that was just in your blood. It was ingrained in you. So you then went back to the family business and then went over and get further education at Harvard, correct?
Right.
Bad reputation. Anthony, you had all these degrees. You were doing the family business. You were natural in regards to sales, if there's such a thing. We're going to talk about that in the second segment of our show. So what's the next step for you? When did you realize that you may, in fact, have a talent for helping people sell?
When you take over a family business and you become the sales leader, you have to figure out how to transfer what works to other people who may not have a couple things. So they might not have the character traits but you can overcome some of that if you're aware of it. And they might not have the skills. They often lack the language, the ability to have a conversation that I would call value creating. It took me a long time to figure it out. I was 31 before I figured out how to have a value creating conversation by exposing to my client that I know more than they do. Now, they know more about their business than I do, and they know 100,000 things better than I know those 100,000 things. But when it came to producing a certain set of results, I knew more than they did. So it took me a while to figure out how to help them recognize that they had assumptions that were out of line with reality. And this is sort of the conversation that you and I had before we started. Like, reality doesn't care about your opinions.
No.
And it doesn't care about your feelings. Like, it's just going to be reality. So you don't have to like it, but you do have to respect it. And you have to respect that it's not going to change because of any preference that you might have. Unfortunately, that's true. And I realized that they thought things like labor is cheap. It wasn't. They were cheap. And that's why they weren't getting the results they wanted. So, and the second assumption was labor is abundant. And it's like, it's a 3.1% labor market. That means everybody has a job and you're not going to be able to get the people you want. And once I started to figure out, like, my job is to teach them what reality really requires of them, and then have the most difficult and challenging conversations to make sure that they could do what they needed to do, even if they weren't happy about it. Because my job was to help them get the better result. It wasn't to make them happy. Like, when they got the better result, they'd be happy, but they're not happy going through the process and having the conversation, because they would very much, like most people, like to keep their view of reality. And I learned how to disrupt that. And then selling became easier for me. And it was much easier for me to teach other people.
Share with us, please, when you started working with your company, what was their revenue?
3 million.
So 3 million. Where did it grow to?
50 million.
That is an awesome story.
That's my keynote story.
Stick around for more from my amazing guest, Mr. Anthony Iannarino, here on The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. And oh boy, am I pumped. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing. Well, when it launched, it hit #1. That's right. Top-selling sales book in the entire country on Amazon.com. We're so excited to share many of our proprietary Massimo methods to allow our readers to start finally building that business and the life they've always desired. To get your own copy or learn more, visit www.knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey everyone, it's Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. And Anthony Iannarino, yep, the man with the bad reputation in his youth, but then the Harvard graduate, amazing sales success experience, and now coaching and sharing. So Anthony, let's talk about what's going on in the sales world. And you talked about this a little bit. You took a company from 3 million to 50 million, and no doubt you learned a hell of a lot during this experience. And you're now sharing that with others across the globe. So help us understand, both at the company as well as your current company, what's the core principle or core driver?
I'm going to tell you that it's about value creation. It's about what you're really doing when you're selling is helping facilitate a decision for your client about what they need to do, how they need to do it, so that they can get the results that they want. And the more strategic the results, so one of my frameworks is called level 4, value creation. And so level 1 means you have a good product. Level 2 means you have a good service. Level 3 means you're going to deliver some sort of solution. But level 4 means you're going to give me a strategic outcome. The way that you might think about this, and the way that I wrote it in the first book, was the way that it was said by a Harvard marketing professor, Theodore Levitt, who said people don't want to buy drills, they want 1/4-inch holes. And if they could have the hole without the drill, they would just do that. And so you have to think about, what is it that is strategic? What's a value for that individual? And so the way that I think of it now is that, first off, the client doesn't even know they need a hole. And if they did need a hole, they wouldn't know what kind of hole they needed, and they wouldn't know what wall to put it on. And so they're trying to make a good decision, missing a lot of information and insight. And the one thing that I would tell you, if you're listening to this, I hear from young people all the time, they say, my client knows more than I do. And it's like, well, then they don't need you. You're irrelevant. But you don't have to know more than they do. You need to know more than they do about the particular result that they need. That's the part of this. So now, if I sell what I sell every day, Rod, and you buy it once every 5 years, then I'm having 5 years of experiences to your one experience over that 5-year period. Which one of us knows more about the decision making? Mm-hmm. Which one of us knows more about the real estate market? Which one of us knows what's a good deal or what's a bad deal? Which one of us should know where property values are going to rise and where property values are going to fall? I should be the one that knows those things, because if I know those and you don't, then I'm covering a gap for you. You don't have to know this. And so people that are listening to this kind of a podcast are like, well, I want to be a trusted advisor. We only need 2 things to be a trusted advisor: trust and advice. It's simple. But if you lack the advice, if you don't know anything, if you can't help cover the gaps for me, you're irrelevant to me. So the biggest challenge for salespeople right now is irrelevance. I have a great product, or I have a great property. Okay, great. Good for you. I have to have some way to convey a compelling reason for someone to do something, even though they might not recognize it's the right time for them to do it. Like if you're listening to this, you have people that have bought commercial real estate from you that are not engaged with you right now. And I guarantee you look at properties right now that would be right for them, and the timing would be right for them. And you have to pick up the phone and call them and tell them, like, I know you don't want to buy anything today, but you still need to look at this. Like, even if you're not going to buy it, you need to sit down and we need to have a conversation, because this is an opportunity for you. They might say no, but your job as a trusted advisor is not to go like, Rod, you know what? You missed a great opportunity. Thank you for telling me that. Like, what did I miss? Why didn't you share it with me? Why weren't you thinking about me? So the trust and advice part go hand in hand. Like, I need you to be doing the work on my behalf and sharing things with me that might be useful to me before I know I need them. Not like, oh, Rod, you really hurt yourself there. It's too bad I didn't help you. Like, that's not a good way to handle selling. It's proactive. It's an activity that you do before there's an actual challenge. You don't want people to be challenged. You want them to avoid problems and things that could cause them to be harmed or have their business harmed, right?
Oh, I can't agree with you more. I know when the pandemic hit in March, we found there were 3 reactions, right? There were those who completely panicked, absolutely panicked. I'm talking about service providers out there. I don't care if you're a commercial real estate broker or an insurance agent or whatever you do, just panic, no clue. And if you're a broker, you're probably out of the industry. It's just that simple. It happened in 2008 and it happened again in 2020. The second was petrified. They were like, oh, okay, now what do I do? Which wasn't as bad as panicked, but it wasn't ideal. And the third option was productive. They really understood. And those are the people you said yourself, Anthony, that were right. Those are the people that were receiving calls from their current clients and prospects saying, hey, you know what you're doing more than I do right now. I really need your help. Help me.
Yeah.
They positioned themselves prior to this challenge to be the one providing the advice and be the opportunist. So I completely agree with you. I'm just waiting for my audience to say to themselves, which one was I in March? Which one am I today? That's where they need to be. So Anthony, you learn these elements and we'll get to your company and how you help others. But let's continue on the sales side. My first book was called Commercial Real Estate Brokers Who Dominate. And it was these 8 traits. It was an acronym for what it took to be a great commercial real estate broker. That book is almost 8 years old now. There are traits in there for salespeople. Yeah, it's competency, it's character. Help me understand what you have found.
I think the way I think about it is as a competency model. My first book doesn't have as good of a title as yours. My first book is called The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. We had a 3-book deal. So it was what I thought was going to be a rather limiting title to say it's the only one when I have 3-book deal. And the publisher said, no one's going to remember. And I'm like, well, the second book comes out in 10 months and everyone remembered. Yeah. Like no one let me off the hook. They're like, I thought you said I was buying the only sales guide I'll ever need, and now you're giving me the lost art of closing. And I had a lot of clients who bought very large numbers. So they're like, I just bought 1,000 copies of your first book. 10 months later, yeah, it's a different conversation. That book is a competency model, and they get to name your book. When you go with a traditional publisher, they name the book for you. Right. So for me, it was called 17 Elements. And so those were 17 competency. So character traits and skills. That's the worst name ever. We're never going to publish a book with that name. And when you have a traditional publisher, it's sort of like a romance and like, well, what do you think? And really interested to hear what you have to say. And then they're like, we're naming it anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. I found that out by the third book. They didn't even ask. They're just like, the book's called Eat Their Lunch. And I'm like, oh, it's a good thing I like that. But this is going on Amazon tomorrow. The first book is a success-oriented book. And I wrote it for salespeople, but I also wrote it for leaders because leaders would say to me, Rod, they'd say, these guys are terrible at prospecting. And I would go, no, they're actually good at prospecting. They just lack self-discipline. Like they don't do it. That's the problem. There's a guy I know who wrote a book called Knowing is Not Doing. Another guy with an O on the end of his last name. Apparently we're all hyped up on discipline, Rod. Maybe because we need it ourselves. And so that's why it shows up so heavily. They would look at this and look at the skill and think that the skill meant more than the character trait. And I would show them that the character trait's what's dominating the skill and the acquisition of the skill and the willingness to be able to try new things. The book basically has a number of elements at the beginning. So it's discipline, optimism or attitude, caring, competitiveness, resourcefulness, determination or persistence, initiative, communication, and accountability. That's the first half of the book. It's actually a little bit more than the first half of the book because I had so much to say about those things. And that book gives you 3 questions that start with do this now to give people direction on what do I do. I put multiple resources at the end of every chapter because I didn't invent any of these ideas. They're not in any way original. And if you ask successful people, like all those things are true. I put 3 links to other books that you could go read. If you want more discipline, these are good books to read so you could take even more action if that's the gap in your competency. Like if that character trait, I basically break things down into strengths and weaknesses and vulnerabilities. So my strength is sales. My weakness is accounting. I can use a spreadsheet. I don't enjoy it. I don't love it, but it's not a vulnerability for me. I have people that I can just pay and they do really good work taking care of that. But when you're a salesperson, you lack self-discipline. That's a vulnerability. That's not a weakness. That's going to kill your results. If you have a negative attitude and you have a scarcity mindset and you're cynical or skeptical, that's going to kill your results. That's a vulnerability. That's not a weakness for you. That's a vulnerability. You have to do something about that if you want to get better. If you are not capable because you have what I would call learned helplessness, like, Rod, tell me what I need to do. You need to figure out what you need to do. Okay, but what is that? Well, that's your job to figure it out. A couple of Navy SEALs that were teasing me one time, they use a lot of acronyms, and one of them was FITFO. They kept saying FITFO, and I said, what is FITFO? I don't know that acronym. And then they said, figure it the blank out. And that's FITFO. And that's resourcefulness. And I'm like, well, why do you guys use that all the time? And they're like, look, we're going to drop you off in a country somewhere where we might be able to get to you. We might not. And you have a mission to do and you're under-resourced, but you still have to do it. And your job is to figure it out. Like, we're not going to be there for you. People are not always going to be there for you. And in a lot of times, the best thing that you can do is the combination of resourcefulness and initiative. Like, you need to put those two together, figure out what to do and start taking action. Don't wait. So this is something I know you agree with because you wrote a book called Knowing is Not Doing. Yeah, do. You got an initiative, just take action. And then at least you're moving and you can move left or right and adjust as you go. But if you just sit and do nothing, nothing good's going to happen. So that's the first half of the book. The second half is skills. You have to know how to close. And we don't close in one single call. Like, if you're in commercial real estate, that's not a one call close. We're having multiple conversations. So you need to know how to gain commitments. My second book's called The Lost Art of Closing. I called it The Art of Commitment Gaining. And they're like, no, everybody loves closing books. And I'm like, nobody loves closing books. They're terrible. So my book has no like puppy dog, doorknob close, no, like there's no names. Right. There's just commitments. Mm-hmm. And the commitment to explore change, the commitment to decide that it's worth pursuing the change, the commitment to collaborate. So all those kinds of things, the commitment to build consensus around what the right answer is and the investment. And so that's made up of 10 commitments that are designed for B2B salespeople. There's no smarmy language. You're not going to find anything like that in that book. From there, you have to be really good at prospecting. or what we call opportunity creation.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Prospecting calls are where you schedule a meeting, and then you have to have some compelling reason for somebody to do something different when you show up in their office. So you have to be able to make a case to say, because these factors are true, because this is what you want as a goal, these are the kinds of things that we should talk about. That's the exploration of change. And that exploration of change is what actually creates an opportunity. And we think about creating an opportunity for us, but you're also creating an opportunity for your client. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're helping them understand that they have the ability or the opportunity to create better results than they're creating. So you have to have a specific type of conversation when you're creating an opportunity that's beyond, can I have 20 minutes of your time? After that 20 minutes, then it's, I need to talk to you about what we should be doing together and sharing with them some vision of what could be better for them. If there's no gap, if they don't want anything, if they don't know they need to want something, then you have to go in and install that for them.
Appreciate that. Continue.
Storytelling. So that's telling the story, current state, future state. How do we get there? Presenting, proposing. Those are skills. Diagnosis, discovery, that kind of idea is like what's going to work for them and why, and then getting them engaged. And that's critical. Differentiation. Why buy from Rod? Why buy from Rod? Why is it better to do this with me than with someone else? You have to actually prove that differentiation inside the sales call. And then the other ones that I added in the skill set, some of them are not typically talked about. So the first one is business acumen. If you don't know every property, if you don't know how long it's been on the market, if you don't know why they dropped the price on it, if you don't know anything about what's going on, then you do not have the business acumen. You don't. And I beg salespeople, like, you got to get an understanding of business, and not just your business, just business generally. So when you're on the treadmill in the morning, put on Squawk Box, watch CNBC for the first couple hours. You're getting an education on the overall environment, and you're getting lots of people's views that have no politics attached to them. So even if they have politicians on, it's not the right wing or the left wing narrative. It's just simply somebody telling you, these are what we think the impacts are going to be for these decisions that are being made. That's a critical idea, business acumen. Change management. You got to help your clients make the change that you're proposing. And so you have to be able to build consensus. You've got to be able to have really good conversations about how they get there. And then you're going to have to help them execute those things, which leads us with the last skill-based thing, which is leadership. You're leading your client. So you're the leader. So you have to know what's right and what they need to do, and you have to be able to sell that to them. So that's the competency model. But I've added a dozen other competencies since I wrote that book, like courage. The courage means like you're not conflict averse. I'm going to tell you're making a bad decision because I don't want you to get hurt. And I'm not afraid of you not liking me. I'm afraid of failing you. I'm not afraid of you not liking me. I'd rather succeed for you, even if you don't like me. But those are the kinds of things that show up that cause people not to do well.
You have the trials and you have more. Is it a pursuit or drive to somehow address all these traits? Because that seems to be somewhat overwhelming for any individual. What's your approach? What's your suggestion or advice to a salesperson?
Are you married, Rod?
Of course I am.
Doesn't your wife have a giant list of all of your inadequacies?
Yeah.
So you got to work on a lot of things. Here's what I would tell you. If you're a leader, here's what I would tell you. As a leader, if you identify someone that has a vulnerability, let's just shore up that first vulnerability, the one that's going to cost them the most. Don't try to work on everything. You can work on everything over time. But if you get the vulnerability out of the way, if there's one primary vulnerability that stops them from succeeding, then you want to get that one out of the way first. Like someone who won't take initiative. Well, why is that? They lack confidence. Why do they lack confidence? Because they lack competence in this conversation. Okay, so to get them to be able to take initiative, I've got to structure this in a way that says, let me get them the confidence that they need and the competence that they need in the conversation so they will take initiative. So I'm going to look at these and say, what order do I need to put these in to get them where they need to go? And sometimes it's just the character trait, and sometimes it's a complicated combination of skills and character traits that show up together. I was on the call with a client, and this woman said to me, this person I have, like on every single competency, she's excellent, but she has no confidence. I said, why does she not have the confidence? And she said, there's no reason for her not to have it. I'm like, well, there is a reason. You and I don't know what it is, but you have to go find out what it is. It could have been something as simple, Rod, as her mom saying, you're never going to be a great piano player because you're just not very good. Like, you don't know what happens to someone that causes them to not feel good about themselves. You're lucky if you have a mom like I had. My mom was like, you can do anything you want to do. If you want to go play rock and roll, she bought me my makeup and she gave me some of her clothes because I needed women's clothing to be in a hair metal band and that kind of thing. So I was told that you can, but it's up to you. I was told from the time I was 12 or 13 years old, everything is up to me. You can do it if you want to do it. And if you're willing to put in the work, and if you're not, then you can't do it.
You said earlier that you get calls from your clients who share with you, or you hear, my team just can't prospect. But your mother was a leader, and your mother allowed you and empowered you to be the best that you could be. So let's talk about leadership, sales leadership. How does that apply to everything you shared thus far?
The first thing is, as a leader, everybody's watching you. And the first thing in a culture, and my next book is called Leading Growth, the first thing in a culture is not accountability. The first thing in a culture is psychological safety. I need to know that I have a sense of belonging here. I need to be in an environment where if I do have a vulnerability, you're not going to criticize me and fire me for the vulnerability without us trying to correct it first. And people are looking to see how you treat people. If you believe people are transactional and you're going to say, like, this person's not getting it done, I'm firing them, that's not the right way to do it. So there's a certain structure that you would go through. And the structure would be something like, let's retrain them and let's give them coaching and let's see if we can't fix this. And now everybody sees, like, you're making a great effort to help this person get through whatever their vulnerability is. And then if that doesn't work, then you say, this person probably doesn't belong in sales. They belong in a different role. Let me see if I can reassign them to some place where their skills and that vulnerability is not going to be a problem for them in this other role. Let me see if I can find them another place to go. So it's retrain and recoach, reassign, and then remove, like in that order. Don't just put remove up at the top. Then other people are like, I'm totally disposable here. If I have any problem myself, I'll be gone. And now people can't come to you and get the help that they need. And Rod, I didn't play sports. I had a voice teacher, though, when I was a certain age, probably 16, 17, started playing music. And the people that you remember are the people that did not allow you to be mediocre. They didn't allow you to believe that what you were is what you're capable of. And they would tell you that you're capable of far more and then make you do it, even though you were like, why are they so tough on me? They're tough on you because they love you and they want you to do better. They're not tough on you because they don't like you. When they don't like you, they ignore you. And that's what most leaders are guilty of. I'm going to ignore you. I'm not going to try to help you get better because that's hard for me. So one of the things that we do is help leaders with the tools they need to see all these things that are missing and then help them get the competence and the confidence and the character traits to be able to go and do these things. That's the way that I would look at it. Now, when you have a psychologically safe environment, now you can start imposing accountability because people know that they're not alone. They're going to have help and that you're going to care about them and you're going to make sure that they find a way to gain what they need to be able to do the work they need to do.
Is there a time when you just know it's time to make a change? That this individual is or is not destined to be successful in the world of sales?
Well, yeah. And sometimes it's not that they're not destined to, it's that they're not willing to do the work. And so you can coach people and you can help people and you can turn around people that you didn't believe could be turned around. But the ones that won't pick up their end of the stick, at some point you have to decide, I have to find somebody here who's willing to do this work. And if they're not willing to do the work, then you have a problem where you can say, I can do everything on my side, but you're not doing it on your side. And if you're not going to do it, then we do have to part ways because you're not doing the part that you need to do.
Love it. I love it, Anthony. You have a sales blog that's read by, I believe, around 65,000 people every month, and probably more than that now. And your weekly newsletter is read by almost 100,000 people every week. Anthony, before we let you go, because I know your time is so valuable, any words of wisdom, any parting shots, any thoughts for our audience?
I would tell you where we are in the environment right now. If you're a leader, the thing I would want you to take away from this is that you should be optimistic about the future. We've never had a pandemic that lasted forever. We've not done that. That's not going to be true here. The right thing to do is always the right thing to do. So don't stop doing what the right thing is because there's a pandemic. And that's what a lot of people did. you still talk to your clients, you still prospect, you still go out and do your job every day. If it's hard, it's hard. So what? It's going to make you stronger on the other side. So if you're a leader, you definitely want to keep people going the right direction and never, ever sway from doing the right thing. So it's blocking and tackling all the time, even when it's discouraging that you can't get the results that you want. You still have to do it. And so you want to keep people focused on that. And if you're a salesperson and you're listening to a podcast like this, good for you, first of all, for trying to get more knowledge and more information. If you were to pick up a book like The Only Sales Guide, you send us a note that you bought it, send us your Amazon receipt. We'll give you the assessment that you can assess yourself and a workbook that you can use, because you have to work on yourself first. So if you want your revenue to grow, first you have to grow. So that's true if you're a leader. It's true if you're a salesperson. If you could get the results that you need right now, you'd already be getting them. So you have to start looking and saying, what is it that I need to do so that I can get what I really want? And what am I willing to change to be able to do that? That kind of work will help you do that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Anthony. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
The best place to go is thesalesblog.com. And you're going to be accosted and interrupted by a pop-up that will give you 3 ebooks or something like that. And you'll be on the newsletter. The newsletter is the best place to start. So every Sunday morning, you're going to get some big idea, mostly mindset driven, mostly about who you are and your identity and what you need to do. You'll have that so you can have some way to start Monday morning on a really positive note.
Anthony, I can't thank you enough for your wisdom, your insight, your leadership, and really entertaining stories about bad reputation. So thank you for being part of the Massimo Show.
Thanks for having me.
Once again, our guest gave you so much wisdom, so much knowledge, but it doesn't mean anything because knowing isn't doing. It's the application that gets the results. I wish you the very best. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. I want to thank you for listening to this version of The Massimo Show. And please, please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners and helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach.